Ellie Rome. Welcome.
Hello, Olivia. Thank you. I'm so
Um,
excited to be here.
I'm so glad that you're here. Ellie and I met. We spoke on a panel together, and it was kind of a chaotic event, but it ended up being actually really beautiful and intimate, about women and our relationship to our bodies and disordered eating and healing. And I loved Ellie's effervescent both energy and her commitment to the work and your vulnerability in sharing your story. So I thought it'd be really exciting and helpful to maybe share that with the wider audience. So welcome to the Live Young podcast.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. So grateful to be here.
Yeah. So um chemical engineer to sort of wellness guru, facilitator, breathwork aficionado, community builder, healer. How does that work? How did that happen?
Yeah, so I went to school to become an engineer. I didn't really know why. Now that I reflect on it, I think it was um, I had initially wanted to go to med school, and there was some doubt in me that was like, oh, if I don't get into med school, then I want a solid degree to fall back on. And this is all like high school me, not even knowing what an engineer was. I was good at math, I was good at science. And I think also I knew it would make my dad proud. So there was a big part of that was driving that, I think. Um, and so I went into engineering, became an engineer, and I was an engineer for 4 years. But during college is when I really started having health issues. So I was a sugar addict my whole life, binge ate, my whole up until I was about 25. And I didn't really have any external, like I was very small when I was little, so I didn't have a weight issue until I got in college and I started gaining weight. And then on top of that weight gain, I would have thyroid issues. I was getting these losing hair, bloated all the time, skin breaking out, really bad periods. I had the shortness of breath issues that I was getting these really bad episodes of shortness of breath. And I went to 6 different doctors, all of whom didn't ask why. They just handed me prescriptions, couldn't really pinpoint anything wrong. And one of those being a gastroenterologist who didn't even ask me what I was eating. None of them asked me what I was eating at the time. And this is, I think, about 8 or 9 years ago. Or like, how old am I? I think it was about 10 years ago. So I'm hoping it's better now going to the doctor, but I still think a lot of doctors don't ask about lifestyle and diet. So finally, I went to a holistic practitioner, and she was the only one that asked me what I was eating. And at the time, I thought I was doing pretty well. I was like low fat yogurt, whole wheat bread, very conventional wisdom on how to lose weight, like what Cosmopolitan magazine would tell me is healthy. And she knew pretty much instantly that it was a lot of the food that was driving massive inflammation in my body. So, long story short, and also at the time, I'll mention I was completely addicted to Adderall, burning myself out, had no self-awareness, coping mechanisms. It was just like impulsively reaching for Adderall or impulsively reaching for food.
Wow.
So yeah, so I ended up taking some. I did like 3 months just getting off of gluten, soy, dairy, and eggs, and I really didn't feel that much better. And it was because I was eating a bunch of still processed food. I was still binging on sugar and like gluten-free brownies. And then it wasn't until I did a Whole 30, which was really like kind of new at the time. And I failed my first 24 hours. I didn't make it 24 hours. I ended up binging on a box of gluten-free brownies. And then I committed again. And I made it those 30 days. And those 30 days changed my life.
Mm.
All of my symptoms went away. I mean, it was like I thought it was magic. And I lost a bunch of weight. So I was holding on to so much inflammation weight. But it was the first time in my life that I didn't feel so hooked on sugar. Like another day I was a sugar addict, constantly on my mind. Like I don't use that addict word lightly. Like it was just like so compulsive. It was my safety blanket. And there was just such less of a draw after those 30 days. And then from that point,
Can I stop
it
you
was,
for a second? Sorry.
yeah, please stop me.
I
I'm
just
sorry. That
want
was
to
a lot.
clarify. Tell me Whole 30, what is it? For someone who
Yeah,
doesn't.
so totally. So Whole 30 is a 30-day elimination diet. And what that means is it takes out the most commonly problematic sugar foods. So I mentioned I'd already tried taking out like gluten, dairy, soy, and you can have eggs on the Whole30, but it also takes out all grains. It takes out all processed sugar, processed food. And so you really are redeveloping a relationship with whole foods for 30 days. So it's, mostly I was eating meat, eggs, vegetables, whole fruit, and then nuts and seeds if you do well with those. I have a nut allergy, so that wasn't a big part of my Whole30, but it's basically eliminating a lot of the major triggers and also the relationship with foods that are like, they call them like paleofied foods. So it was things like even a paleo brownie, like for me at that time, which just made me want to eat a ton of paleo brownies. Like it was still lighting up that dopamine center in my brain. And so it was having a break from that and started really creating space from the physical addiction that I was experiencing. And then after those 30 days, it was starting to build self-awareness of not only, why are these foods affecting me this way? It was I was still binging on healthy food. So even if it was Whole30 approved, there were still times that it was less extreme because the foods themselves weren't so bingeable, but the the coping mechanism, like reaching for chicken, like reaching for Brussels sprouts, just wanting to eat, just wanting to consume. And that was the next kind of step in the evolution of like, oh, why am I reaching for this food? Oh, every time I'm stressed, like noticing these patterns. And then I ended up becoming a coach and I built a coaching business on the side because I was just upset. I felt so great. I wanted to help other people. I got kind of obsessed with the research. I did a whole semester in school on sugar chin. And so I became a coach. I also became an engineer. And then I worked for 4 years as an engineer. I built the coaching business for 2 years. And then I was able to quit my job to do it full time. And
Mm,
then, yeah, since then, became a yoga teacher, got really into breath work, plant medicine, started leading retreats. And it's just kind of like
yeah.
following the next part.
So, I mean, underneath, I in my work like to go underneath the hood. So, I find that there's always a reason that we need to fill ourselves. This idea of binging or filling whatever empty. And I know that plant medicine sort of creates an expansion of understanding the why. Did you come into knowing, not, and share whatever you will or not, but like, was it a lonely you were feeling? Did you understand, what was the charge behind the need to reach? Because I think what people don't do is, we so often, and I hate the word shame, but we shame ourselves in the behavior as opposed to holding ourselves with love to understand why. Because when you can understand the why, you can, I hope, hold yourself in compassion and with less judgment around why you do what you do. And once you hold yourself in compassion, you can hold others in compassion. So, what was the journey into not just changing the belief or the habit and like the Whole30, but like changing the belief and the habit? I think also to go a level underneath is changing like the relationship you have to yourself so that you don't feel the need to reach?
Totally. So this is so good. So the biggest thing I've seen is like even though I was like Whole30, I swung the pendulum like the entire other way where I was so restrictive, so strict on myself, scared. Like I was scared to eat things that were off the Whole30 because I thought I would gain weight back or like so it kind of swung the pendulum and there was still not a self-compassion. There was still this like controlling still thinking about food a lot. And that was the freedom that I wanted. It was not necessarily from just the like guilt and shame. Like that was still there. Those cycles were still running in just a different way. And I think the biggest what plant medicine helped me so much was self-compassion. Of like I've never felt that amount of like feeling held by the shaman helpers, feeling held by the medicine, being able to self-soothe myself. And that was the biggest shift in just how I talk to myself, how I treat myself. And that it's such a soft way where behaviors really do change, where now I wanted to take care of my body. I don't want to binge, not because I'm trying to not gain weight. I don't want to binge because I wouldn't do that to myself. I don't want to do that to my body. And then even when those programs start, like will run, like if I'll have a thought loop or a thought, if I may gain weight, like that program is still there. And I realize that's generational. I watch my grandmother with it. I have a lot of women in my family, sisters, and we all have that. And so it will still creep up, but now to have the awareness of like, oh, but I can come back to higher self and hold that part of me that is scared to gain weight because she thinks she's going to lose love, hold her, love on her, and come back to myself. What do I actually want in this moment? Oh, I want
Mm.
to eat. Great. Let me slow down with it and enjoy every bite. Is this nourishing my body? How do I feel after I eat this?
I
And it's
mean,
just this
yeah,
complete,
with
yeah,
that, like the fear programming of like food, and if I gain weight, I won't have love, and everything is tied up in my physical appearance, and I'm unworthy unless I'm this size. And it's so interesting, the relationships we build with food, when food is really supposed to nourish us, but we then can flip that and weaponize it. And like the binging on sugar, like we live in a culture of sugar addicts. It's so easy. And I mean, personally, like when I through a plant medicine journey, I came to understand why the first thing I do is grab a lollipop. I'll go to the corner store, a blow pop, whatever. I went into a repressed memory of being like very young at the doctor's office. My mom was all hands on deck with my brother, and I was alone roaming the office, and they gave me a lollipop, and I was lonely. And this was the coping mechanism. It was the self-soothing. So for years, even now, when I feel lonely, I go and grab a lollipop. And so understanding that behavior for me, instead of judging myself, and I can hold myself in it and allow myself, like, baby girl, have a lollipop. It's okay. Like, don't eat the whole box, right? But like, have a lollipop. But knowing my why has created so much more space to understand, like, that, okay, you're lonely and now you want a lollipop, but like, can we just hold ourselves in the lonely? You could feel the lonely, like allow yourself to experience it without needing to fill the void, right? And if you need to fill it, fill it. But like, in terms of like the why, and why I bring this up is because like, you're not less than if you gain a pound or 5 pounds. Like, you're not worth more or unlovable if. So, but because we've heard all of these things, it almost makes us want to like do it. And like that unworthy, that's almost like what's driving us to like want to binge on the sugar more, because we already feel that depth of empty. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So I'm just curious, like when you were in, and I understand the sugar thing so much because it's a real thing. Do you remember the motivation, like what took over you that like created that need or that want or that feeling? Because it's a
I
dissociation of sorts, right? You go, it's an outer body experience, the binge.
totally, and I used it, yeah, for sure, for numbing and disassociation, and I think it was from multiple roots. So the when I was really little, so I'm the youngest of four, so I think a lot of it was just feeling of safety in my nervous system when there was like so much chaos. It was like, oh, but I can have sugar and I'll feel safe, or I want attention, I'm not getting attention, but I can like I can be with myself in this moment and numb out. So I think there was a lot of that, and then I'm still kind of working out if there. I had so I had a deep psilocybin experience that revealed to me some sexual molestation when I was about 6. And so then that led me into ayahuasca, which revealed a lot more of just in like releasing a lot of shame that I had from that experience, and didn't realize how much just things like wanting my dad to be there, wanting someone to like rescue me in that moment, and not wanting him to be upset. So there's just like this, just like so many parts activated and scared, and like just living with that so much. And so I think a lot of the sugar was also just numbing from that, like holding this secret since I was 6 till I told my parents like 2 years ago.
Wow.
So I think a lot, just this like this chronic fear in my nervous system that like of what happened.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That is so courageous. And I think, I speak so much to sexual trauma, and I've experienced so much sexual assault in my story, in my life. And every time someone says it, it doesn't get easier to hear, to digest. My whole body sort of lights up because I recognize what that does and what that takes. And the path to healing from that space is so hard. And it's so, it's not linear. There is no way. It's sort of, you have to find your way. And I think it takes so much courage to go underneath and be willing, brave enough to recognize that. And every time I hear it, um it makes me even more conscious of how prevalent it is. So I bow to you for being open to sharing it, doing the work to heal it, and also being unashamed to honestly say me too. And I really give you a lot of credit.
Oh, thank you, Olivia. And
Yeah.
it is wild, and especially like sharing it, how many people then come, and yeah, that not like we're not alone in it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah, that how
in
prevalent.
that, I mean, with like this idea of how trauma is connected to the way that we treat our bodies, right? What we experience as young children, even if it's imprinted in our psyche somewhere, even if we don't remember it, it then manifests into the behaviors we take on. So be it our relationship to food, our relationship to body, our relationship to family or friends, or this feeling. Did you find in this time of your life when you were like uncontrollably reaching for food and doing whatever you could to sort of cope with the emotions that were inside of you that you weren't like cognizant of, what did your relationships look like outside of self? Like not to you, but to others.
To like friends, to family.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there were a lot of intimacy barriers. So I had a lot of friends. I was very social. However, it felt like a separation. Like there was this like opening up to people that was so new to me, around really vulnerable things. Around, I remember even with just with guys in high school, like it was crippling for me to think about actually expressing how I felt about it. Like there's just this crippling fear of abandonment. So it was like doing really destructive behaviors to win attention from them. Like that would actually just, as I see it now, it's like completely pushing somebody away. And so I don't know if that answers your question, but very felt like just intimacy blocks for sure.
Yeah. And it does it. I think what comes to me is this idea of isolation, because I know the loop. I know the feeling dissociated or not feeling in your body, and also feeling like you have to fill the voids. And sort of when it comes to binging, or then there's purging, or when it comes to withholding from food, it's, if there's sort of social events around food, there's this again barrier of like, you don't know if you can control yourself or overly control yourself, and it just becomes the elephant in the room, and you don't know how to dance around it when like there's such an incredible amount of disordered eating in our society, in our culture, and such an overwhelming fixation on food, and like the paleo, the way we define ourselves around our relationships with food. And food to me now, it's taken a long time to get here, it just brings people together. Like I was just home with my family, and everyone lives in Miami Beach, and I'm the only one that's not in Texas. And you know we always had dinner, six of us growing up together. And when I was going through a really hard time and such disordered eating, also as a result of pretty intensive sexual trauma, I would make every excuse not to come to the table. And so fast forward through this healing journey, and coming back into my body and in my sovereignty, whatever else, I feel very confident around my relationship with food, to the extent that it's like, what do you want for dinner, what are we doing for dinner? And my only response to it is like, I don't care, I just want to be with you. So to me, food is the bridge in a lot of ways. It's a connection, it's a connecting point. So when there's disorder around it, I find it, like you said, there's an intimacy barrier. It really becomes a discomfort. Even friends now who have so many things around food, it's like, we can't go to dinner anywhere, so I still get a little bit triggered by it, because I'm like, just fucking don't eat it, excuse my language, or just like, whatever, figure it out. But it brings up such a past version of myself. So I have to hold that for myself too. Like, it's okay, it's not yours, but I just want to sit around a table and love, you know?
Oh,
Yeah. And I wonder, is
yeah.
that how you, like, how do you feel? Like, what does your relationship now look like with food?
Yeah, I think I mentioned like the pendulum swung the other way, and then I was very dogmatic and like felt like preaching because like paleo, that worked for me, but realizing so much how restrictive and how even just that it was very dogmatic, and I was closing myself off and isolating myself through diet, or wanting to, yeah, not like saying no to going to dinner or not wanting to. And I think just having, it was like the now coming back into the middle of just opening myself, and like what you said, like food being love, and more being around the social aspect and honoring my body, what I want to eat, but not being so uptight and scared and just being able to be present.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's really softened.
I love that. I think it's beautiful. And, I found that something, and I'm sure you have a lot of tools to help people be present when they eat. But like for me, it's really being with the, like not being distracted on a phone if I'm eating alone, or really finding like gratitude or saying a prayer before for both my body and the food before I consume. Like there's something really about, as you said, softening and this awareness of like, this is here to sort of fuel my body, it's for me kind of thing. And I think if we all could slow down for a moment and just think about how lucky we are to even have the food, right? How lucky we are to even have this body that's strong and intuitive enough and powerful enough to digest this food. Like it just creates a different relationship with food, right?
Totally. And
Yeah.
I think I remember so much of even just the food being like going all day long, and then the food being just even tying that, like I was getting grounding from food, because the only time I was even I was unconscious while I was eating, but it was just like getting this grounding, but actually, and then overeating, because wanting that to keep going, but actually slowing down, putting on a plate, reading, finding that grounding from presence versus getting it from the food. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So in your toolkit, you hold space for people, you work with a lot of people as a healer to help them with their binge eating disorders or to heal IBS and digestive issues, and their emotional eating and their sugar addiction. What does that look like? Like, what does the intake look like? How do people, when, at what point of the journey do people come to you? And when they do, like, what's the report? What do you do?
Yeah. So I usually work one-on-one with my clients, either 90 days or 6 months. And usually people are coming when they're kind of at the end of the rope. And I call myself an emotional eating coach, and a lot of people, some people don't know what that is, or they don't, or they're becoming aware that they're emotional eating. They usually are coming to me when they've done a lot of chronic dieting, yo-yo dieting, and are realizing that it's more than just the food. It's more than just a diet. Like, what is the underlying behaviors? What are the underlying emotions, the coping mechanism, and wanting to really change the drivers of that, and wanting to change their relationship with themselves. Many people that come to me, similar to me, in that they're burnout, and a lot of what I've realized is that so much of the emotional eating is so tied with workaholism, and that burn is like the burnout cycle leading to the eating cycle, and they're kind of feed each other. And so yeah, I work with mostly women, a lot of burnt out women, and food is their number one coping mechanism.
Hmm. Is it often tied in with Adderall or alcohol or other substances?
Sometimes I feel like that hasn't been as common, but definitely a lot of people who either, or especially if they've given up drinking, then it kind of just makes the food worse, the eating part worse. It's kind of trading one substance for another. Um, some have been on Adderall, some drink wine or drink a lot. They want to cut that down too, but that hasn't been a huge theme.
Hmm. So if someone were to come to you and sort of you're starting to work together, what would be, or someone who's listening to this who's experienced some sort of emotional eating, what's like high level, like some tips to help?
Yeah. Well, I think I like to hold it in like both the physical body and the emotional body. So, because it's not just the emotions. Like I mentioned for me, the physical body, we're eating foods that are really hyper palatable, meaning super stimulating to our taste buds, lighting up the dopamine system, having us reach for more. It's really hard to emotionally regulate when our physical body is so addicted to sugar. Maybe there's candida overgrowth and bacteria in our gut, the fungi in the gut, yeast infections are like feeding for sugar. So it is that piece, the nutritional piece of like, how can we work to get more whole foods into your diet? How can we balance your blood sugar so that it's easier to regulate? And so there is a nutritional piece in learning food sensitivities, and even having just people just connect with themselves. I know for myself, before getting into this work, I had no idea that food was making me feel tired or making me feel like I'd eat certain things and I'd feel really bloated, but I didn't have the connection. And so really like body food connection. What foods actually make me feel light? What foods make me feel good? What foods do I have energy after? And starting to see food not as good or bad. It's not shameful if you eat something that makes you feel tired, but starting to like, oh, I don't want to feel bloated and tired. I want to go take a nap. Oh, so maybe I won't choose this donut or whatever food that I know is going to spur that, or eat this thing. That's identifying bingeable foods. What foods do you start eating that really, like, they're very hard to stop? And then maybe having more caution around those, setting up more boundaries around those, setting up more presence with those foods, knowing, okay, oh, I want to eat this ice cream. I'm going to slow down with it. I'm going to create a ritual for it where I am very present, eating every bite with intention and grateful. And then afterwards, there's a common thing with super stimulating foods of just the brain wanting another bite. So how can I give my brain something to do after that so I don't overeat? And it's just creating like just new behaviors and slowing down versus hyper restriction of like never eat ice cream again. Because then parts of ourselves will be like, will override and take over. So that's the nutrition, I guess, part. And the emotional part is really doing more of the underlying work of why am I reaching for this right now? What are my major emotional triggers? And then starting to go even I do a lot of parts work with people. So are you familiar with IFS or parts work?
Yeah. Well, I think
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
awesome. So for any of your listeners, IFS, it's called Internal Family Systems from Dr. Richard Schwartz, and it's such an incredible therapeutic model of psychotherapy, and it basically categorizes ourselves into parts that we're not just some mono mind. We actually have a bunch of different parts of ourselves. We have parts of ourselves that really want to be healthy. We have parts of ourselves that really want to go binge on a bunch of ice cream. And so it's getting to learn your parts and not push them away. But then also a big core of that model is that we all have a higher self, capital S self, that is loving, compassionate. It's characterized by 8 C's, some of them being caring, compassionate, curious, confident, connected. And I like to think of it as like the loving mother of myself. Like I'm the loving mother of all my parts. And if I'm in an energy where I'm feeling resentful or shameful or I'm shaming myself and I know I'm not in self energy and I can slow down and see what part is present. And I can pause here, Olivia. I don't know if you want to expand on that or
No, I mean, I
yeah.
love it. We all have lots of parts. And I think in my reclamation and sort of my hero's journey and healing journey, I had to sort of parse out like the 6-year-old that was really hurting, or the 12-year-old, 13-year-old that was really hurting and never felt seen, or the angry teenager and sort of the reckless, like all of these parts. And then as I sort of rescued the 6-year-old from my closet and, sort of, and also from my childhood home closet where she would hide and sort of, could face the angry teenager that would get blackout drunk to dissociate because, if she didn't feel it, it didn't happen. So whatever sexual assault was happening, it was like, didn't matter because I didn't feel it. Like, and then own all of these parts of me, I could bring myself back to this whole person, bring myself home. And even like, a couple of weeks ago, I was like, I feel this battle happening within myself. It's like the part of me that like knows that, like you said, the highest self. And I see it as my crone, like, it's like this old, wise woman that has lived a million years, right? And then this younger inner child that is almost afraid of how much the crone knows, almost like afraid of the potential. And I felt like this need for reconciliation between the two of them, because the younger one was actually winning. She, the naysayer was actually winning. So if you're listening and this feels confusing, what I tell my clients is to start identifying the parts of you, naming the parts of you, the ages of you, the habits of you that you could really parse out to see, like, we are all whole people, but we do have tons of parts. So carry on. So you have them, you have your clients like sort of identify these parts and probably bring themselves back into whole, right?
Yes, exactly. And a big part of this is learning self-compassion. So many people are coming in with a lot of shame and guilt for how they have been these cycles because they feel so like they should be able to break this on their own or should be able to have the willpower to break these. But when it's come to like deep addiction, and I can feel like a shaming word, addiction, it's hard to like for myself admit that I'm a sugar addict. But seeing that as just a really deep rutted behavior that has been programmed in me as a coping mechanism. And to find gentleness, I think parts work has helped me so much and helps my clients is find it's compassion. It's a lot easier when I can see that it's like a 6-year-old part of me that is just so scared and she doesn't want to be left alone or she's feeling lonely. And then I can open my heart and if I do have the binge part come online, that I can actually, instead of push that part away, like, oh, she's just here because she wants to keep me from feeling something. And can I hold her too? And we'll all sit together like a little family and and self-soothe. And I think that's what I love the parts work so much because the binge eating cycle is it's so common. It's very um for most people it's okay, have a binge or feeling something, maybe lonely, tired, stressed, overwhelmed, have a binge. That's followed by a protective part that's guilt, shame, and or the exiled emotions come up, guilt and shame, and then a protector part, manager part's like, you need to go run 10 miles and not going to eat anything with sugar for the next month. And these really extreme declarations or restrictions. And then that may work for a little while. And then something else happens or overwhelm builds up and the binge part comes in again. And it's just like this relentless cycle. So it's how can we meet these parts when they come up to break the cycle and as often as we can in that cycle, come back to self. And it's okay if you have a binge. I think that's a big part of this work is that the expectation that immediately it should be perfect. And if you have a binge, then all the work is gone and you're back to square one. That's like, if you can accept that as part of the process, like the binges will become fewer and less and farther in between. And the biggest practice I think is catching that shame and guilt spiral afterwards. The muscle of compassion of like, oh, here's the game, the immense guilty part that is shaming me for what I just did. Can I soften with her? Check in with her. What is going on? Why are you freaking out? Why are you so upset that this just happened? And a lot of times it's like she does not want me to gain weight. And underneath that, because that old belief system that I will lose love if I gain weight. And it's like, okay, let's breathe together. You're okay. This part is probably, for me, really young, 4, started picking up those signals from sisters and unconsciously, just like societal conditioning or hearing someone else talk about someone else being overweight. And then I program like, oh, don't go overweight because they'll talk about you. Like it's all just in the ether.
Yeah.
And so it's just being able to recognize the programs as they come up or the parts as they come up and practicing coming back to self.
Yeah. I think it's such a powerful reminder that self-compassion, also the willingness to forgive yourself. Like there is no perfect or this pot of gold at the end of the rainbow that you're all of a sudden healed and you're never going to slip up again. And I feel this way with everything. Like I was going through a breakup and I would feel lonely and I would want to text him or whatever else. And like, what if you do? Okay, so you do, and then you forgive yourself from doing, like, and then you move on. It's like, how long, as you said, you want to stay in the spiral, or how deep do you want to go in it? Like, I believe the flex is like the resilience muscle. Like, how quickly can you bounce back? How quickly can you forgive, get over, keep going, and not get stuck in what was? And I think it can be said for so many things. Like, pick yourself up and keep going. And life is nuanced. Like, there's so much that happens that's unexpected, or if you have experienced particularly trauma, it's so easy to become triggered again. And I think the flex too is acknowledging what you're triggered by and sort of avoiding that, or recognizing if you are triggered, what the trigger is, so that you can then move forward, so that you don't stay stuck in the stuck space again. So to anyone listening, if you have a habit or one of these tendencies, be it with food or relationship or sex or dating or alcohol, whatever it looks like for you, we all have our stuff, right? I firmly believe it's like looking at it, seeing it for what it is, seeing why it's there, because in a lot of ways, these are coping mechanisms we've used to protect ourselves from not feeling the depth of emotion or the fear or the worry or whatever, and see them for what they were in your life, what they stood for, what they potentially helped you to do, when you needed to, and remove yourself from them so that you're not that anymore. Separate yourself from them and see, like, this served its purpose, I don't need you anymore. And if I get to a point where, like, I feel that urge and you do the thing, forgive yourself for it. Like, it's okay. Like, and I think it's exactly what you said. And as I call it, it's like the bounce back. Like, how quickly can we get back up and keep going?
Yeah.
So, I mean, so much of my fitness concept, Box and Flow, when I had students in New York, was 9 rounds in a heavy bag. The only thing that mattered was never drop your hands, never give up on yourself, because you're going to fall, shit's going to hit the fan, things are going to, happen unexpectedly, but can you keep going, right? Just keep going. And it was a microcosm of life, because I just saw people walk in and give up. It was too hard. They would drop their hands, or walk in, close down. And then by the time they left, they were just wide open. And that's when I knew that the work was working. And it was just a physical experience of proving to yourself that you can, because we all fall back, we all fall down. It's about getting back up. And I think that your work clearly, proves that, right? Like, I'm sure you see such beautiful progression and success, and also the journey. The journey isn't, from point A to point B. It's just not.
Totally. And I think it's so, I just love what you said around the texting too. Just back to that it's the same thing that's happening, that compulsion. That, like, it's in every area, it's like food is one representation of, like, that compulsive behavior, or wanting, doing something, and then the self-forgiveness. And even, Louise Hay's work. Are you familiar with Louise Hay? Yeah, so just the affirmations. I mean, that has been so helpful. And it can sound so, like, fluffy or sometimes, but it is just like, same with Joe Dispenza's work. Of some of these are just deeply rooted habits in like yoga world, some scars, and if they to be able to, like, a lot of my clients looking at pictures and then instantly the record's playing of self-criticism, or I don't want to look at that picture, or looking in the mirror and instantly here comes the 25 things criticizing about self. And it's like, okay, well, I know this is the program loop that's on play, and I can interrupt that. And so to recondition of every time you look at a picture, like, oh, you look amazing. Or like, what, like, and maybe it doesn't feel viscerally, but not even letting your mind go there. Or maybe it's holding the part that is criticizing and loving her. And why are you being so, what's going on? What are you trying to protect me from, or criticizing? So there's that. But also sometimes it's just this loop. It's just like, let's set up for judgment. And am I going to let this play? And then there is a rebuilding, a new loop. Every time I look in the mirror, and I think you do this, Olivia, I think you shared this before. When you look in the mirror, you say, that was so powerful for me to hear. I needed that reminder of, like that is such an opportunity to build the muscle of self-love. And, like,
Yeah, I mean, I
your best
sign
friend
up every
does.
day. Like, I love you. I have, like, every day I sign and date it. It's not even I love you, it's I choose you. I love you and I choose you. Like, because I found that, like, self-love of I love myself. It's taken me so long to feel that. And I feel it to such a depth. And I also choose me. And I think that that's the little, like, kicker for me, because it's such a powerful thing. Like, if we all have the choice, and I love that in your website, you speak to Viktor Frankl and this choice of, between stimulus and response, there is this choice. And I just think that when it comes to how we see ourselves, can we choose to see ourselves in love with love and actually choose us? If you had to choose, would you choose you? So I make it a point every day to wake up and turn on my light in my bathroom, whatever I look like, whatever mascara is on my face. And it's like, I love you and I choose you. So that's sort of my, yeah, it's it's not even an affirmation to me. It's just this like, it's a choice, you know? Yeah.
Oh, and how
I
long?
want to talk
Oh,
to you before we end. You do a lot with changing state. So be it breath work or cold plunge, you've built a beautiful community, you know, that you gather in Austin in person, you do retreats. What is it about changing the state of someone, be it in a cold plunge, meaning you get in a cold plunge, your state is changed. You can't avoid that deep breath work. You're getting out of your conscious mind into your subconscious, out of your thinking mind into your feeling body through breath work. What is it about that that is sort of is a powerful tool in the work that you do?
yeah, I think there's many parts of this. I love this question. So the one huge part was, so with breath work, with ice baths, a lot of it is that we hold so much in our physical body, so much stress, emotion, anxiety, from daily accumulation. And when we don't have proper ways to express that pressure, we'll repress it. And then it shows up, it comes back as either depression, and we're just shoving everything down, and we won't feel anything, because at the moment we start to feel something, there's this huge flood. So it's like, let's just
Mm.
suppress and not feel anything. Or it'll manifest into just insane anxiety, addictions, addictive behaviors. And so a breath work allows us to move energy in the body and get it up and out. So if y'all have ever seen the video of the like impala that just got attacked by a jaguar or something, and they show it where it doesn't die, so it ends up, and I might be wrong, it might be a lion, but the lion goes away, but the impala is like has frozen, and then you watch the impala afterwards, and it's just shaking everything out, trembling, it's tremors, and it's getting all of that fear energy out of its body. And animals know how to do that, but we as humans, when something happens, a lot of times it's just shut it down, don't talk about it, don't cry, don't get angry, don't scream, don't be loud. And it's just like, okay, let's hold this. And then our internal system is a wreck. And so breath work is like these even shorter amounts of breath work can be just like these little pressure relief valves for the system. And then extended breath work can be like very cathartic. And that's what psychedelics help a lot with in plant medicine, is just these big cathartic releases of things that we've been holding, and allow ourselves to feel them so they can be released. But I think also with breath work, the movement of energy, as you mentioned, like a state change. Sometimes when we're in a funk, it's just the energy that needs to be moved. Something's trapped. Maybe it's an expression of creation, that creativity needs to come out. And similar to exercise, like going for a run or building endorphins, we're bringing fresh oxygen into the blood and changing our physiology, which then changes our thoughts. So we can be in a negative mood, tired, and then we're hyper-oxygenating the body and waking back up, breathing in affirmations. It's shifting things in the nervous system, and even 10 minutes can change your whole day. So it's and the breath or ice baths on top of that are amazing for inflammation. But I think the best thing I love about ice baths is for stepping into something uncomfortable, stepping into something that could be, and then sitting in it. So that directly correlates with any urge, anything that here's a cupcake that I know I don't want to eat right now, but it's right in front of me, and I can sit in it. I can watch this craving or some impulse in me that is not going to serve my highest good, and I can sit in that discomfort. And so it's a training ground. Yeah.
Beautiful. Um, Thank you so much for sharing your stories and your gifts and your ability to hold space for so many people who haven't yet learned to hold it for themselves. I think that we need more people in the world who are compassionate enough to own their own trauma, to, you know, see themselves like both through their darkness and in their light and in their love, and then to share that with the world. So thank you for showing up as that, you know, for so many people as a result of being that for yourself. I think that's the boldest work you can do, is be willing to face your own darkness, and sort of pull out your light and your magic. And you've clearly done that. Where can people find you?
Thank you so much for saying that, Olivia. And I want to reflect that back at you. And where can people find me? I'm on Instagram at Mindful Belly, and I have a podcast called Don't Eat Your Feelings. And yeah, those are probably the two biggest channels.
Thank you. And any closing advice or words or anything that you feel that you haven't shared that would be helpful?
I think breath. We kind of talked about, I think through all of it, it's like the ability to come back to breath in a moment is a superpower. Just like even one humongous, big, deep inhale and exhale can transform, can transform.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much, Ellie. It's such a gift to spend time with you. And find her, find this beautiful woman on.
Thank you.